somehow as a result of having asthma and fighting it, I built up my lung capacity as growing up as a child. Because that's a hard one. I went out and played as hard as I could, and it got out as much as I could until I couldn't do it anymore. If you haven't done the things that you need to do to maintain your wellness all your life, then you're going to fall behind and not being able to accomplish to be able to fall back on that and when you need it.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com, and when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
So this is Sifu Slim. I am full of gratitude this morning because I've got a special guest coming from overseas. I'm in Oahu, Hawaii, living the life, as some people think. I also work a lot, so don't get too excited about my life here. I have a surfboard. I have not yet used it. I've been here since July, but I'm in the water probably 5 days a week, but I don't have time to be a surfer right now because I'm doing a lot of projects related to wellness, which is my passion. So mind, body, and spirit. And I've had the good fortune to have been able to have spent a significant part of time writing books. And so I have Sedentary Nation right here, which is the history of physical movement from the hunter-gatherers to the couch potatoes. And then I have The Aging Athlete. And interestingly enough, you find that aging athletes and athletes, when they leave their high-performance years, become predominantly, 90% of them, unfortunately, from this research that I've done, become sedentary. And we're going to take a look through the life of a good friend of mine, who's Marty Nelson, and he's in Sacramento, California, in his studio, speaking with us this morning. So welcome aboard, Marty.
Welcome to see my old friend Sifu. Sifu Slim.
So Marty is from Sacramento, so you grew up with a good chance to be outside. I was outside in New Jersey, but I had galoshes on and parkas on and dealing with slush and freezing rain. You had a minute bit of that, so you were outside playing sports or working almost year-round when you were a 10-year-old, weren't you?
Being a Californian, we had a lot of time to be able to spend outdoors. Started in Southern California, it was warm there all of the time, but when in the mid-50s, when we came up here to Sacramento, I experienced my first flood in 1955.
Was that the biggie?
That was the biggie. It flooded Yuba City, Marysville. It was the same flood basically that happened before the Oroville Dam was built. And then just here last week, we had a big scare because the Oroville Dam filled up to a capacity it had never reached in its history, in its 50-some year history. And those towns were evacuated.
Wow.
So the weather is changing in California from what it was when I was a kid. It was probably more snow and a lot less rain, but we'd get periods of time where we get a lot of rain quick, like this last season. It reminds me of when it used to be, but generally I think we're getting more rain and less snow over the long term.
Yeah. So when you were in that 55 flood, I would imagine old Sacramento, which is the historic gold rush town from the 1800s, and it had a lower level, and eventually throughout history they had to cancel out that first floor and make that like a basement and then start their businesses up above. And that might have been because of that 1955 flood and some previous floods. Do you remember old Sacramento in that 55 zone?
Yeah, nothing happened to Old Sac in the 55 time, but the reason for you're correct about the reason for the history of the old Sacramento being 15 feet underneath what the street level is now is because the city was built up over time and levees built to keep the floodwaters out of the land, because the natural place for people to start civilizations back when like the Sutter came to Sacramento was to build it close to the river where the freight could come in.
Yeah.
And it didn't have freight all the way up, but yeah.
There's a sign, I believe that's where I saw this information, in right near Old Sacramento, that talks about the netting that was placed across the Sacramento River. I don't know the width in Old Sacramento, but I would guess it would be something like 100 yards. And they put the net there, and so these poor salmon who are going up to lay their eggs up in the streams towards the mountains above Sacramento, they would catch these things and eat them on their way up. And I think the settlers learned about this from the Native Americans. So we talk about natural living, but the Native Americans and then the settlers after them in the 1800s were grabbing salmon on their way to spawn up in the foothills of the mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains on the foothills. You know anything about that?
Oh, the bounty of the Sacramento River Valley is, and of course the whole San Joaquin Valley back in the times before the flood control structures were put in and the civilization built up was just incredible. I mean, the San Francisco Bay Area with all its productive estuaries and before they were filled in, and the Sacramento River Delta, and of course the fantastic farmland that was created and that is unequaled in the world, is right here.
And that's because of all the flooding of the Sacramento River, right? The Delta filling in all of that nutrient dense water coming down from the mountains and bringing minerals and flooding those plains that they now grow rice on. They used to be the tomato capital of the world. They still grow those in Yolo County, but rice and some other, what are the other features? I know almond trees and nut trees are popular. Anything else on those low-lying fields besides rice and tomatoes?
Probably the major crops, the major money crops would be the rice in certain areas where it's clay underneath and they can pond water during the summer. That would be mostly the North Sacramento River Valley. But as you go south, then you have the ability to grow the nut trees and north as well, of course, in the Sacramento Valley as well. The walnuts, pecans, almonds. All the pistachios all the way down to the Central Valley, where I used to work on the California Water Project down there when it was just desert. Now it's pistachio orchards. So
let's take a step back in Marty's life to when you were, you said you had suffered, you were a sickly childhood, and it's not uncommon to have people with asthma in a dry area like Sacramento can be much of the year. And dealing with, you probably had a carpet in your home, I would guess. You had plenty of allergens in the air. So take us back to your youth, and then what you did to come out of, get motivated. Like Jack LaLanne was a sickly kid, and then he learned about nutrition and exercise and became the godfather of fitness and lived till 96, thriving, even being intimate in his later years, and being someone who was still motivating others and himself up until the end. How did you move from being what you termed as a sickly kid with asthma and then come out of that?
I discovered that I could run.
So how sick were you before you discovered you could run?
From the time I was, I think I had an adverse reaction to penicillin when I was about 5 years old. I remember that, and I'm allergic to penicillin to this day. I think that set off some problems when we lived in Southern California in my immune system. But Southern California was dry and relatively few pollens because it's just high desert down there where we lived in San Bernardino. But then we moved up here in '55 when I was 8 years old, and into an environment full of allergens. I mean, the lush Central Valley, the grasslands, the flowers, the orchards, everything. Quite a different shock for somebody with probably a slightly compromised immune system and a developed asthma. And so I was treated, thankfully, by a great doctor here in town who gave me immune scratches on my arms 2 times a week. My mother took me to the doctor, I think twice a week for like 6 or 8 months, as I recall, something of that frequency anyway. Had adverse reactions to these little things, pollen, dust, and the things that you mentioned inside the house, cat fur, even though we didn't have animals, that's that sort of thing. And so my immune system was built up by those immune scratches. And there's a number of times when I thought I was going to die reacting to those things. And of course they had medications to counteract, an adverse asthmatic reaction, and I was not going to die, but I felt like I was. Heck, I don't know. You must have some insights at this point that you want to ask about.
Sure. Would it be possible to take your glasses and set them on the table, because we're getting a little reflection with the light hitting them? Thank you. Now we can see your handsome face.
Oh, thank you.
How old are you, Marty?
Good to hear that somebody say that when you're 70 years old.
So you turned 70 recently?
In May, I will be. In May. Yeah.
Oh, in May.
Yeah.
And you have good family hair genetics. You got wavy hair at age 70. It's not common to be able to boast a full head of hair and a wave to it at age 70.
I have some nutrition secrets for that. I really do.
Share those. I'm sure the viewing audience would like to hear that. Yeah, the hair secret. I'm ready to spray it on right now.
Very handsome, sir. Yeah, my wife discovered this. My wife, Kat, who has been into nutrition for her entire life, just about discovered this blue-green algae.
I've heard about that. I didn't know it had to do with hair growth.
It has to do with basically end of the telomeres in your DNA to keep them from unraveling. It's nutrition for what's the name of it? What's the term?
The cellular level?
The stem cells. Yeah, it's nutrition for stem cells. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nutrition for stem cells. And so being the hair is part of the, an indication of a lot of things, I'm sure, but one of them would be general wellness just for some people. Then the other thing is hyaluronic acid. I'm sure you're familiar with that. That is the fluid that keeps the pads in our spine fluid and cushiony. It's the components of our skin and nails and hair. Any connective tissue.
Spell the first 4 letters of that word.
Oh, I'm going to probably spell it wrong, Slim. L-A, hyaluronic.
Oh, yeah, I know hyaluronic, yeah. I wonder what that occurs in naturally, hyaluronic acid.
I haven't looked into it. I don't know how they derive it, but it is a basic component of all of the fluids in our system. That's all I know about as a general lay person, and how it's done that for me. It helps keep your joints lubricated, your eyes, hair, nails, any kind of connective tissue, like especially skin. And I rub it in the hair as well as put it on the skin, as well as eat it. I mean, it's tasteless and odorless.
Well, how about somebody? You have a brother?
Yeah, my brother. Yeah. He has good hair too.
Yes, and he probably didn't do the healthy stuff you did, and he's got good hair. So there may also be a genetic link to what you're talking about.
I'm sure there is. But my wife, who is 80 years old, has hair down to her butt. She's 80 years old, and she has soft, silky, long, strong hair down to her butt. And she takes twice as much of this stuff as I do.
Mm-hmm. Hyaluronic.
She has some good genetics in the hair as well.
I would guess Hyaluronic.
That sounds right.
Hyaluronic acid.
Yeah.
And it's an anionic, non-sulfated glycosaminoglycan distributed widely through connective epithelial neural tissues, among other things, non-sulfated plasma membrane, Golgi apparatus. So it's got its whole chemistry root here on the Wikipedia page, and so this is something I haven't looked into before. I've heard it. I've been to seminars where they've mentioned it, but this is something that I am going to look into. It says physiological function, helps with cancer prevention, wound repair, inflammation, granulation, cell migration, skin healing, fetal wound healing. Interesting, fetal wound healing. I didn't know anything about fetal wound healing. And then cosmetic.
I didn't know all that. I hadn't even looked into it, and you've looked into it 10 times more than I did in the last minute. I've known about it for 5 years.
So when you were sick as a kid, you were did you remain more indoors when you were dealing with asthma, or were you still out playing with friends, just carrying around like an EpiPen with epinephrine in it? How did you live before you found health?
Wow. That's a hard one. I went out and played as hard as I could, and it got out as much as I could until I couldn't do it anymore, and then had to go in and rest or and breathe, or just sit down because I couldn't breathe.
They didn't have inhalers?
Huh?
They didn't have inhalers when you were a kid?
No. None like that. Not in the mid-50s. No way. So I remember once sitting on a porch. I had been very sick because I had my tonsils as well. My tonsils were inflamed. So that again, the immune system is being attacked all the time, right? So then we have situations where, because we're being attacked all the time and being inflamed throughout the body, that certain things pop to the surface, like asthma, for example, something that will eventually kill you if it's not taken care of. So as a child, you get really scared of that. I remember being on my knees praying on the side of the bed a couple times. Thank God my mom would give me some spiritual insights by that age.
Wow. And were you coachable? You got along with your mom and dad? You were a kid who could listen and learn?
Yeah. I was a pretty good kid, I think.
That's good.
I think. I got worse later, though.
And then you mentioned something, you shared with me a story about your first running race with the kids at school, and then the interaction you had with a coach. Could you share that story, when moving from a sickly kid to a kid that had some inspirational message about some of his abilities?
Somehow I think as a result of this, actually the asthma, somehow as a result of having asthma and fighting it, I built up my lung capacity as growing up as a child, because so you're actually doing a kind of an exercise, that is unusual.
Heavy aspiration when you have an asthma attack.
Yeah, and so when you're growing, then that enables your lungs to grow. That's my theory anyway. I think that's what happened to me. So in 6th grade, one of the tests that they had in physical ed was everybody had to run a 3/4 mile race. They could walk it, they could run it, you could do whatever you wanted, but you had to go around the schoolyard, two times, I think it was. And it turned out that I got second place in terms of the time it took to do it. Now, we didn't know we were having a race, but the coach, the teacher of the 6th grade, or maybe it was the 5th grade teacher, I forget, at Elliott Grammar School in Sacramento, California, came up to me and said, come over here. And he points to the ground. It was a dusty piece of ground. And he writes the word 6:11. He says, you ran 3/4 of a mile in 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Don't ever forget that. You were second in your class. And I got, wow, I did that? I did? Wow. So the asthma, et cetera, continued until high school, just before high school, I think, and through junior high school. And it ended when I had the thing was inflaming me all the time taken out, which was the tonsils. So when the tonsils got taken out, I began to recover very quickly. And because I'd already built up my lungs, having a long period of time being asthmatic, I then went out for the track team because my coach had told me, or my teacher had told me in grammar school, do that. So 4 years later, 5 years later, I forget what it was, I decided, okay, I'm going to run track. So I became a long distance runner in high school and I had a school record for a couple of years until the next class beat me.
So were you running the mile predominantly?
Yeah, mile and 2 mile and cross country.
You remember any of your mile times?
Best mile on a track was 4:32. Best 2 mile was 10:02, I think it was.
Very respectable for that was the late 50s or 60s. What was that?
That was mid 60s then.
Mid-60s.
Yeah, well, early to mid 60s. Yeah. The age of the 4-minute miler, Roger Bannister. That's and then later the Kansan, Jim Ryan.
So that gave you an impetus to feel good about yourself, to improve yourself, to be around other people, working in a team format. Anything else you'd like to share about that part of your life?
I think the discipline that you learn in high school athletics does well throughout your life if you're really serious about it and apply it at that time. Because it has carried me throughout my life in terms of the mindset. If you want to run 2 miles or 3 miles in 15 or 16 minutes, which I did, and a lot of other people did, you got to set a goal. And I'm going to finish this. We're going to finish this, and you're going to go through the line strong when you end. And I think that's an important thing that, at least very basically, that I've been able to get from athletics, applying to my business life. Now, having been in business for 40 years, I'm a long distance runner still.
Yeah, you're applying those lessons from the competitive nature and the overcoming obstacles and trying new things. You've tried new things in your business. Not all have worked, and many have, and that's allowed you to maintain a competitiveness and still gain clientele. I mean, you have to do good work. You have to keep your clients happy, and you have to gain new clients. Anything else on the business side that you can share for people out there that either have a business or want to open a business that you think might be helpful to them?
Make sure it's your passion. Whatever you're doing, if you're going to do a business with, make sure it's your passion. If you want to do it long term, because you're going to get beat down here and there, and you got to be able to come back up, and you got to be able to look forward and set a path to follow, and knowing that you're still going to get knocked off that path once in a while, but you got to have that long term goal. But basically, show up every day, do the best you can, whatever everybody else does in life, You
mentioned one statement from your dad, who was on his deathbed, and he shared a a word to you. Do you remember that word?
Attrition.
Attrition. Tell me how that happened and what he meant and how that hit you.
Well, my dad was a very principled man, and a man of pretty few words, who got butterflies in his stomach when he had to give a speech. He had a heart attack and was not doing well at all. And I was a young man, not married yet, still, screwing around, not getting much done in my life. And at that point, except maybe learning about art, which I will forever be grateful for. But I asked him, I said, well, Dad, how do you get along in life? You had, 70 years here. I'm like 25. What's your best advice? I mean, how do you succeed? And he held up his hands like this, and then he goes like this, and he goes, you know what this is? I said, well, not really. I says, well, you ever been to the Grand Canyon? Yeah. What do you see there? Well, you see this, right? You see this. This is what's the pillars and all the erosion. That's what's left. What left? That structure of geology. What left? And the soft stuff. Says, that's right. You stick in there. You do the best you can, and attrition will get you through if you hold on. Very basic advice.
Yeah, that's like the war in warfare. Who's standing at the end? That's the attrition of the battle.
Absolutely, Sifu. That's right. That's and yeah, you could be as brilliant as possible, but if you don't have the ability to maintain and follow through and go through the finish line, and you haven't, like you said in your piece that I just saw earlier, if you haven't done the things that you need to do to maintain your wellness all your life, then you're going to fall behind and not being able to accomplish to be able to fall back on that and when you need it later on in life.
So when I coach people, I would guess the most challenging thing that I have to do, and maybe even when people come into your store and you want to explain, how the process works, is that slowing someone down for the time necessary to communicate and listen is the hard part, because people are in a rush. They're thinking, let's get this done. Doesn't this person in the store know what I want? Well, when I sit them down for wellness coaching, I have to get an hour and a half, 2 hours of their time. Otherwise, we're just fixing things, Band-Aids, maybe placing a Band-Aid on a problem, fixing symptoms. But I want to get to the root. So if we use your dad's hand, I'm going to tell these people that, what are these? And they say, I don't know, what are those? And they say, well, these are leaves on a tree. I said, I can go in and help you with your leaves. If your leaves have a disease, if they're not getting enough nutrients, I can help you with some of that. But if we go through here, we've got the bark, we've got the structure of the tree, the limbs, and then we come down here, and this is where I can actually make a difference that will last, and that will build a strong, trunk and a strong branches and a strong leaf if we get this root connected to where it's supposed to be connected. So we've got mind, body, and spirit. We've got karma, and there are many more things we could add onto that list. Human relationships, doing right for the rest of the people in the world. So it's a long list, but if we just start out with mind, body, and spirit and you, I want to get deep and find out if you're not taking care of your mind. Is it because you're too fatigued? Is it because your mind is not engaged? Is it because your mind is overwhelmed? Then we go to the body. Are you too busy? Are you not interested? Do you not have good feelings when you take care of your body, which I would think is very rare? So we've got mind, body, and then spirit. Are you not being grateful? Are you not expressing that gratitude? Are you not worshiping with others and sharing things that are near and dear to you and asking for assistance from a higher power, from wisdom of the ages, from spiritual guidance? You know, those are some of the things that I look to. And people look at my certificate and they say, oh, you're a personal trainer. I said, yes, I am a personal trainer, but I want to look at all of these things so that we can develop a plan that you can use for a long time, long after the day-to-day or the weekly or the monthly relationship with me ends. You could use these tools to thrive through the aging process, and wouldn't that be magical? What are your thoughts on slowing people down?
I think you just described a tree with good roots will always, in good soil, will always bear good fruit, if it's a fruit tree. And if it's not a fruit tree, it's going to stand there and last for a long, long time, as long as it has good roots and all the rest of the things that you those elements of life and living that you just mentioned. I think that's really excellent. And I think, so, you know, and being direct with people. That's my father also used to say. He says, Marty, beware of people who waste your time. He says, because you can never get it back. You know? So of course, you know, how do you determine whether people are wasting your time or not? Maybe you're not listening hard enough, you know. So in terms of communication, I found over the time be able to filter my comments and questions to my customer because I'm always got a good idea of what they're going to want to have. But I want them to tell me what they want to do. And I'm going to guide them along the way. But I think as you get older, fewer words, better results.
Very good. When someone
I noticed that in your productions, by the way. They're very direct, and I really like that.
In my video productions. So go to Sifu Slim, SIFU Slim on YouTube, and you can see some of those, or go to my website, sifuslim.com. Yeah. And
there's no waste going on in your productions, and that is also you know, as I'm sure, a direct result of your attitude towards your body and wellness, and your body, mind, and spirit and wellness.
Yeah, I wrote these books, and I hope they're entertaining. This one has a lot of stories in it, and this one has a lot of philosophy mixed in with stories, and wellness guide as well. But I mean, I have a background in history, so the struggle of the 1970s through now has been one of becoming consistently more sedentary. So I wrote this book about that, and I said I want to look into the origins, find out about that tree of sedentary lifestyles. You have that in ancient Egypt when you have these diseases of affluenza, you're suffering affluenza, they talk about. And that meant when people had so much time on their hand, they had all of these servants doing all the work. Well, they would lay around, they would eat, which can give you gout, indigestion, too much glucose in your system, obesity, lackadaisical attitude. It's just a bad thing when you're not doing anything. And so that was ancient Egypt, but that was such a small percentage of the people who had the wealth to do that. Ancient Rome had some people, and so some of these civilizations had affluent people who weren't taking care of themselves. But oftentimes the affluent people would go on hunting trips regularly and would have concubines when they'd switch around. So they were having these intimacy sessions that lasted very long. They weren't as sedentary as you might find in someone today that's a desk worker who gets on the bus and goes home and then gets to their home and does some cooking, a pretty sedentary life. So I looked into that, and I found that the biggest problem I see is when you take sedentary lifestyles and you say, well, since we're so sedentary, that we're going to have to penalize ourselves with exercise. So exercise becomes a penalty for being sedentary, it becomes a penalty for being obese, and it becomes a penalty for having a heart ailment or some other medical ailment. So what a horrible thing to teach people. These are all penalties. So come to see me. I'm a personal trainer and I can help you by penalizing you for your lifestyle. I say forget all that. The website I started with was maintenanceworkout.com. It has the word work in it, but maintenance workout. So what I'm preaching to people is once you get fit to a level that you can sustain, it doesn't have to be a world-class level. It doesn't have to be the way you looked when you were 17 or 18 if you were fit then and on a sports team or on a farm or what have you. But you get on maintenance and now you can recreate in your daily maintenance. You can do dancing, you can do some chin-ups along with the dancing. You can go on hikes, you can play tennis, you can play golf with some exercises as well. So this is recreation. It's joyful movement, it's recreation, it's bodies in motion, and it's not a penalty. So tell me what you think about that that strategy that I've come up with.
I think it's an excellent reframing. Going back to running track, a lot of the impetus to finish a race or to do good in a race was your mindset. So, and I think you are what you think you are, and of course you are what you think you are, and what you do. There's the next step, but you got to be you got to think what you are in order to be that. So I think that looking at exercise as being a beneficial thing that just gets better and better and better, which is how it has been for me, trying to stay in shape at 70 years old, and not being very successful the last few months because it's been raining here all the time. But
floods in Northern California, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, and in Southern California too, but unexpected downpours. But yeah, I agree with your attitude about that. Once you get to the point that you can maintain, then it becomes more of a pleasure. And even though it's going to be work to get there, like work is in your workoutmaintenance.com, you got to work to get there, but you got to reframe the idea of the work as this is work that's benefiting me and it feels great. And
it's a joyful release. So there's all kinds of biochemical things happening. Like right now, I went out and did about an hour and a half this morning. And at the end of that, I did a sitting practice, which is samurai sitting. So it's different than yoga relaxation sitting. It's this breath from your hara area, which is below your navel. And so you're breathing, it's a preparation type breath that the samurai did, where you're focused. So I'm sitting in a lotus position with really good posture, and I'm focused that anything within my 180-degree periphery, I am aware of anything that moves into that space. And so the samurai, you have the emperor up here, then you have the shogun below him, and then you have all these monks and their temples, the samurai monks, and they're preparing all the time for focus, for warfare, for caretaking of their space, and they're always in this preparation zone, and they're called on to be the defenders for that shogun of spaces, of castles, of temples, of farms, etc. And so I'm doing this the first time in my life, a sitting practice, which is definitely a challenge for someone who's tall and thin. And I have a very long back and a lower back that I constantly have to be aware of and take care of, because it doesn't like sitting. It doesn't like standing. I played golf my whole life, and golf's not a very good sport for the body, especially the lower back. Tiger Woods knows all about that. He's going through back spasms in his early 40s right now. But so the way I look at this thing is, you learn something new about the body and about the whole wellness package on a regular basis. As you mentioned, the blue-green algae, the hyaluronic acid. And so we're going to learn about that. And this maintenance fitness concept, because everybody's coming out with this transformation, lose pounds quickly, get ripped quickly. All this stuff to me is just a craziness. I want people to learn the gift of nature. The natural movement is a gift, and when you get good at that, when you're in the zone, you flourish and thrive. Your endorphins react, your biochemistry reacts, and you breathe and you fill in those lungs. Your cells love this, and then it's this joyful movement. What do you think?
I think you're inviting people to invite all the sensories into their wellness through exercise. That's what I'm getting from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really good. So if you are aware of, of the scent of the flowers that, in the park that you're running through, if you're aware of the slight breeze that's coming off the ocean, or maybe off the lake, or the slight breeze that kicked up, in the fall when the tree leaves are beginning to decay. I mean, and the sound of your feet going through the leaves if you're running. All of those things contribute to doing the exercise that we have to do in life in order to live. You use it or you lose it, especially when you get to be past 60 like I am. I think you use it or you lose it, and that goes to the sensory perceptions, your mindset, everything that you're describing. You're putting together an entire experience, to me, and a philosophy of getting along physically and mentally in your life. That's what I see you're doing.
Yeah, and the whole idea of competition is not a big deal for me anymore. I'm 54 now. When I go out and run with people, if I'm feeling the connection to my biomechanics, my breathing, and I'm running well and not getting fatigued and my joints feel good, I may pick up the pace a little bit, but I don't have to beat anyone. I used to run in fun runs in Sacramento area in Northern California in the 1980s. I was working on improving my time. It's a good time to do that in your 20s, and you'll see what your body is capable of. But to take that ethic that I had then of competition mixed in with wellness and carry that on for decades. Some people do it, and my hat's off to them. If that's what gives them a driving force to maintain their physical activity, hallelujah, good for them. But for me, to do what I do, which is 2 hours a day, every day without missing, I had to remove competition from my outlook because it didn't make sense in the wellness package that I'm working on. I wanted to be well. I wanted to have good posture. I wanted to have oxygenation and blood flow to the brain, and forestall some of the bad sides of the aging process. And there are some bad sides. Losing your memory is not a good thing. Losing your ability to tap into the things that you've learned sometimes is not a good thing, especially when you write books like I do, and you're a public speaker and you're coaching people. I want to be able to tap into the learning messages that I had 20, 40 years ago and bring them out when I need that. And the more that I do my fitness and relaxation, and I get better sleep because of all this, the better I'm able to access those recesses in my memory. What do you think about those observations?
I was impressed by your basic schedule, where you say get to bed early. What older people have found works best, as you have said.
Living on senior time.
Exactly, living on senior time, and that's what I have not been doing, and now I'm going to do it. I thank you for that inspiration. You get to bed early, you get up early, and you do your exercise in the morning, right?
Yeah, I'm up. In the wintertime, it'd be before dawn, and so I'm normally up in the 4 o'clock zone, and I'm out in the parks and the beaches and the trails, or public areas or nature areas, from 5 to 7 in the morning is my standard time. And if I got up earlier at 3, for let's say I went to sleep at 8:30 and I only need 6 or 7 hours of sleep, I take a nap most days, I would be up at 3, and I'd be out in the area recreating at 3:45, and that's
Wow.
how I'm doing it. I'm listening to the hunter-gatherer that's in all of us, because those folks, let's say they had to go 18 miles to get to where the herd of antelope were, they would want to, where the herd was, they would want to get up very early, maybe at when people were bedding down after the evening campfire, and start trekking those 18 miles to get to where the herd was going to be, and get the herd where they're still out grazing, at 4 in the morning, 6 in the morning, before the sun in the Serengeti started baking the area, and then they were hiding out near the water holes, near the trees. So I just kind of listen to it. There's no set rule. The main set rule I have is go to sleep early. Don't stay up flipping channels. I haven't owned a TV since '91, except if I was in a hotel or at a friend's house. And then I go to sleep early, and I just listen to the body. When it's tired and I can't read anymore, I go to sleep. That could be 8:30, it could be 10 o'clock, 10:30. And then I wake up, depending on when I went to sleep, 6, 7 hours later. And within an hour, I say, I'm out of the house. I don't want to start rearranging and organizing and doing all this stuff. I think all of that's important. But the morning fitness program, if you get that done, and you take in that gift from nature, the hunt and the gatherer gift, you get that done, then you come home and you either start organizing or you get to work or whatever you have to do, and then you're done. So at the end of the day, which for some people could have been 5 o'clock, but oftentimes it's 8:30, it's 9 o'clock, and then somebody may say, hey, let's go out and get something to eat because we've been at the office for 12 hours. So they may want to go out and get something to eat. In my opinion, it's a big challenge to go out and exercise even at 5 o'clock in the evening after a work day, especially at 7 or 8 when you're really dead tired. So what are your thoughts on getting it out of the way early?
You need the blood flowing through from your head to your toes, and strongly early. I think that's what I'm getting from you. I haven't been doing that, but I think I usually wake up about 8 o'clock, and then I go out, maybe exercise on a stationary bike, if the sun is shining. But I think I'm going to have to get a bike and head on down toward the Sacramento River bike trail. But I think you're right. I mean, physiologically speaking, just you don't want to. When your body's tired at the end of the day and is winding down, you want to come and shock it and say, hey, get up, get going. Come on. No, I want to go to sleep now, okay? I think you're right.
Yes, we don't have kids. Neither of us has kids. So I completely get the people who have kids and have to get them ready for school. Or if there's kids that aren't at school yet that have to get them ready in the morning to whatever they're doing in that age 2, age 3 zone. And so if they're single parents, my gosh, I don't know how you pull it off unless you have another adult in the household, mom, grandma, or someone.
Yeah.
Or if you have the couple, maybe you could do, switch off days, and one person goes out and exercises, or you push the kid in a 3-wheel apparatus, or 2 kids in that apparatus where you're out jogging with them, and the kids are learning. They love movement. Dogs, kids, everyone loves going out for walks and getting movement. It's just natural for them to want that because it's their heritage. It's what your birthright is, to be born a human being. The physical movement is the gift that this incredible body we have thrives on. So I would say figure out a way to get that done early. Now, if you're someone who's thriving with the evening workouts and you get off on an earlier time where you can still get in an hour or more, and then go out and eat after that, or go home and eat after that, and that's working for you, I bless that. That's terrific. I used to do that in my first few years in Sacramento. I would be running in the evenings, and I would be hitting the 24-hour fitness center in the evenings. That was my norm. And gradually I learned that the senior time was a better place for me to be putting my energy, because after dinner, let's say I eat at 6:30, so after dinner and clean up, etc., is 7:30, let's say. The time from 7:30 until bedtime, let's say I went to sleep at 11:30 in my 20s, that time was a time which was more social, which was more infotainment, which was more conversational, or relaxation, taking a jacuzzi, hanging out. And all those things, I'm not saying they're not important, but I had some life goals I wanted to do. One was getting a master's degree. And so what I did in 1990 is I took one class at the State University, California State University in Sacramento, and I saw what a commitment that was. And I said, wow, if I'm going to still do my fitness, I'm going to still eat well and take a nap, how am I going to do this class, which is adding on an extra 3 to 3.5 hours per day? Even when I didn't have class, I still had tons of pages, essays to write, this type of thing, just for one class. And I said, how am I going to do this? I figured out the only way I could do that was by taking my TV out of my life. So there instantly was 2 hours, sometimes 3.
Wow.
So
wow.
I took that out of my life. Then I had time for the master's degree. And then I said, boy, this master's degree is a lot of work, and I'm not able to read my 40 to 70 to 80 pages that I need to read late at night, because you need your full energy. So I said, let me start going to sleep earlier like seniors do. So I started going, I dialed it down from 11:30 to 10:30, and now I'm normally going to sleep sometime between 9 and 10, and that's allowed me to get a lot done. This, amazing how much capacity you have in the first half of the day, at least for me. I have a little lull sometime between post lunch and 3 o'clock, somewhere in there. So I'll take a siesta for part of that. And then I may have a little pick me up later. But the time for me to do the learning acquisition and the heavy production of the reading and writing, thinking and coaching is definitely not from 8 o'clock at night until 11:30. That's what I consider my best downtime. Not everyone has that, but that's what works for me. So how have you figured out some of these things and the timing of your productivity, Marty?
Well, I have to say that I am not a very productive person when it comes to managing my time. I got to admit that, and I've learned a lot from what I've learned from you today, having gotten back in contact with you after all these years. I should have been following you earlier. Really.
Even as a 30-something-year-old person, when we hung out, did you think that I consider myself a guy who's worked on self so much that I'm in the guru capacity now, and I do that with an open heart and open mind, and I'm not claiming to be the best in the world, but that's kind of my calling. Did I have some of those elements when you knew me back in my 30s?
Well, let me think back.
I had aspirations.
Absolutely, you should. And let's say that you were no stranger to controversy.
Thinking outside the box, eh?
Yeah. I'll never forget. I don't know if I should mention it now, but we had a great time working on that video project.
Yeah, we'll probably bring that in on a different conversation, but it's a historical documentary where the deck was stacked against us, but we stayed down and through, as they say in the golf swing, and we kept our eye on the ball, and we got it completed, and it made a few people very happy. And you got to get projects out of the way. And when you give a speech, they call that clearing your throat. It's like the first minute of the speech or the sermon at church. It's the clearing the throat portion. And for us, I produced other videos since then, and I imagine you've helped a lot of people with their video production since then, and advertising campaigns and court cases. You've done a lot of video and photo work for court cases. So right. For us, it was a good clearing the throat project, because it was such a big project of documentation and film related to that project that we had to learn how to distill it. And boy, what a project to start cut our chops on. Well,
I think we both wanted to find some justice in the world that we were dealing with, and that's the feeling I got from you, is that you wanted to find out some truth about some things, and we were lucky enough to be able to do it, and just because of circumstances, because that information today is still debated, maybe unfortunately to say this, still new information. It didn't get out that much.
Yeah,
but it's still it's still good information on that controversy.
Yeah, you can go back to a lot of things. You know, the growth of places like Sizzler. I have this in my book, Sedentary Nation. The growth of the soft foods. So in my parents' generation, when you had meat and potatoes, the meat took 20-some chews per forkful to before you swallowed it. The potatoes, 5 or 6, chews. When you got to the 1980s at Sizzler and all these restaurants and then the mac and cheese foods, you had food that was spooned or forked in, and it was almost like a tongue smush, and the teeth were moving that food around, but it was food that was already mushy food, and that was almost swallowable in 3 or 4 chews. So that's a big difference. So imagine the capacity on the much larger plates that came out also in the 1980s. Plates in my grandparents' generation were about yay big, and they grew 30, 40, 50% in the 1980s. And then this whole idea of these all-you-can-eat buffets, that was very popularized. That was popularized in the 1980s. So you have the food issues, you have less quality food, you have less nutrient-rich soil, you have factory farming gone ballistic by the 1980s, and then you have the modern medicine saying, in the growth of the HMOs, where you're controlled, your wellness, your nutrition, your food in schools, it's all controlled by these giant conglomerates, and that all happened, in my opinion, to a severe degree in the 1980s. And so that's a good starting point for this research. And the people who are like me, who step back, they don't argue about those things that I'm sharing right now. That's a good starting point for the research. The medical media, which is often controlled by the big forces that are those, what I would call the evil forces of food and medicine, they're the ones that are publishing the articles saying that it's quackery to suggest the things that I'm suggesting. So your thoughts?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I think the American, we mechanized our food production out of need and profit. America, which is blessed with the best climates and most diverse farmlands on the face of the planet, was able to supply more wheat and corn and everything else than we needed, and made good money exporting that to the rest of the world. And at the same time, we started to mechanize everything, and then we came in to starting to merchandise everything. I mean, you didn't merchandise potatoes at the farmer's market, in 1935. You just knew the potatoes are going to be there, right? And you say, well, you put a sign, Farmer John's corn, this is the best corn in the area. Okay, fine. But that you weren't in, getting corn from Toledo and eating it in New Mexico.
It wasn't the distance shipping of food to much of a degree in the 1930s.
Yeah, and the refrigeration, which allowed, refrigeration is what allowed, of course, California agriculture to thrive, because then you could get fresh fruits and vegetables across the world, across the nation, and still be good when they got there, relatively speaking, during certain parts of the year when it wasn't available other times. But yeah, I think the contamination of the soils with pesticides, which were developed after World War II, because they didn't know what to do all the residues from the oil refining. That's when we started to get the heavy-duty pesticides applied to farmlands after World War II, and we started to discover, the problems with that, through Rachel Carson and Silent Spring.
Silent Spring, yep.
And she identified that, and now we're still, but here 50 years later, we're still losing our bees, and the chemical companies were saying, we don't know, we can't figure this out. Why are we losing our bees?
We're still doing studies, and we'll do decades of studies in the meantime, and then we'll put the pressure on that.
Yeah, when I had a little farm in Yuba City. In fact, that's when I met you, was when I had that little farm up there, I think.
Yes.
In Yuba City. And even though we raised everything ourselves on this little 3-acre farm and sold boysenberries and lollyberries to the local ladies, and didn't apply any pesticides whatsoever, these big, huge helicopters would come in, on a foggy day in the Central Valley and spray these poisons, like some kind of a Russian helicopter from Afghanistan would come and swoop in and poison the area, of all the fruit trees and peach trees that surrounded us. So sick, she had to leave and go to another state to recover where her daughter could help her. And we sold the property and got out of there. But pesticides, we have to keep our bodies clean of these assaults that from our normal world. And you can't do, no matter what you do, if you don't exercise, you can't do that.
And if you're poisoned, it's hard to exercise. You don't have the lung capacity, the cellular structures, you're fatigued. It's hard to exercise. So in closing, I'm going to suggest that being fit is tremendous if you're in a toxic environment. Being fit is where you need to be, because the more fat, the more adipose tissue, the more toxins are remaining in your body, because that's where they live. The toxins are predominantly living in your fat stores. And so fat is a very helpful thing. It gives you lots of energy. It gives you warmth. It gives you protection. It's a wonderful thing. But if you're in a toxic environment, you want to be as streamlined as you can be, and you want to be able to run and rebound. So all of your lymph and your 40-some areas where the lymph is in your body, you want to rebound so all of that lymph fluid is flowing and cleaning out those toxins and allowing your internal organs to do its cleansing of your blood supply, and allowing your lungs to do the cleaning of the air that you breathe. So all this stuff is related. There's not one magic thing. Mind, body, and spirit, they all have to have good attention and good programs and relaxation and downtime to make it all work. Anything you'd care to share in closing, Marty?
I like your concept of the tree, of all the branches of the tree necessary for good health, rising above the ground, healthy and bright and virile, with life, but knowing that all of that is maintained by the same thing underground. It's got a good root, and it's going to stay there if you do it every day, and like you recommend. And I think and that tree is not going to get blown over. It's going to take one hell of a wind to blow that tree over. If you got a good roots and a good thing. So, are you
able to stand up and do a closing exercise with me?
I'll try.
All right, so make sure you continue to.
It's zoomed in, so I don't know if you can see anything.
Yeah, make sure you continue to talk during this, because I'll let both of us count. That way the camera will go between both of us.
Well, this is a lot of firsts, Henry. This is a lot of firsts for me today. I'm seeing you again after all these years. I mean, actually seeing you. Last time I saw you was a long time ago back here in Sacramento, and I learned so much. Thank you. Okay, I'm ready for the exercise.
All right, so we're going to do 10 jumping jacks, and I want you to count also, because that way the camera will pick you up as we're counting.
Oh, geez. Okay, let me take this jacket off because it's restrictive.
You're looking fit.
Yeah, I've been staying fit. I mean, basically, but don't have a lot of energy. I gotta get to work on it. But I'm doing the work. So our friend Jacqueline will start. We're gonna go from 10 down to 1. Ready? 3, 2, 1. 10, 9. Keep counting. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's good. We feel better. My eyes are open. My smile is bigger, just because of little rejuvenation, breaking up the interview and filling in the intense 10 jumping jacks. How hard was that? Intense. You are absolutely right. I feel instantly better. Absolutely, I do instantly.
Instantly. So remember those little gems of wisdom. Our friend Jack LaLanne taught us that when we were growing up, and there's no reason why we should stop his gift at any time in our lives. Keep moving, keep bonding, and keep smiling and laughing throughout life. I'm Sifu Slim in conversation with Marty Nelson from Sacramento. And go by and visit Marty. Where's your location, Marty?
2630 Arden Way in Sacramento. We save memories. We convert all your old analog media from the 19th and 20th century to 21st century digital media on DVD, CD, or hard drive.
And what's your website?
Videolabmultimedia@gmail.com.
How about your website?
That is videolabmultimedia.com. I just gave you my email address.
There you go. And so people can come to you and have their memories preserved in a digital format, and they can look on your website and see what you do. I'm going to do 10 more because I feel so good. You want to join me in 10 more?
I will, yes. Okay.
On your mark, get set, go. 10, 9,
8, 7,
6,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1. Da, 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 da. Have a great day, everyone. SifuSlim.com. Wishing you all the best in your health, wellness, perseverance through life. Take care.
Thank you.